So today, class, we're going to be talking about another comprehension strategy that we can add to our tool belt. And we've talked all about these comprehension strategies. We've added a lot of tools to our tool belt that we can pull out when we need to understand when we're reading a book, and we can pull out to summarize, to retell a book to a friend, and we can pull out all these different strategies. And one important thing we've been talking about is how you don't have to use the same strategy as your friend when you're comprehending something. So I'm going to add another strategy to your tool belt today, and it is called visualizing. So we see the word visual in visualizing, and we know that visual is to see something or something that is seen. So in the word visualizing, we know that we're going to be seeing something or something to do with images, and we're going to be creating images. So in visualizing, in the strategy that we're adding to our tool belt, it is when good readers create mental pictures in their heads of what they're reading. So it's when you're reading and you come along and you see some words, but you create your own image in your head, and it's just in your head. So we're going to be using some thinking stems to help us when we're reading to be able to visualize and to create a bigger and better picture of what we're reading. So some of the thinking stems are I can see, taste, hear, smell, and touch. And you can use one of those. You don't have to use all of them. The next thinking stem is when I read, I can imagine, and then you fill in the blank. And the last one is I am picturing. So these thinking stems all help us create that mental image in our head while we're reading. So today we're going to be using this story called Through Georgia's Eyes. And this story is about one of our favorite artist, Georgia O'Keeffe, who we painted with a little bit earlier. But this story is called Through Georgia's Eyes by Rachel Rodriguez. And as I'm reading this story, I'm going to be stopping at many places. And when I stop at those places, I'm going to be telling y'all what I am thinking and what I am visualizing in my head when I read this story. So we're going to start Through Georgia's Eyes by Rachel Rodriguez. So, Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, 1887. Georgia's first memory. She will always remember these colors in the brightness of light, light all around. Soon, Georgia runs and plays games with her brothers and sisters. Her father gives her sweets and plays Irish tunes. Her mother reads stories and cares for the young children. Everyone works hard on the farm. Georgia roams the prairie. The trees and the land keep her company. Pencil and sketch pad comfort her, and she discovers that she likes to be alone. Seasons melt into seasons on her family's farm. Georgia struggles to show on paper what she sees. At 12, she takes painting lessons. She tells her friends, I am going to be an artist. But in 1899, only boys became artists. A girl wishing to be one was a little bit scandalous. And Georgia sees life differently. She paints and paints. Hours pass without notice, and she wonders if she can achieve her dream. She walks around a lake, hikes into the woods, and everywhere she looks, shapes hum and sing to her. At art school, brushes and canvas become her language. Paint speaks for her. Watercolor and oil are her words. For a time, Georgia lives in the city. She walks through canyons of concrete. She misses the outdoor world. The sun steals a bite from a skyscraper. The faraway place, open sky and land, calls her. So after I read this page, I'm going to stop because the phrase canyons of concrete really stood out to me. And in my head, right when I read those words, I created a mental picture of what those words were, and I visualized canyons of concrete. So when I read those words from our author, for a time, Georgia lives in the city. She walks through canyons of concrete. When I read canyons of concrete, this is sort of the mental image that I got, but not completely. but I just imagined in my head a big, big city full of concrete, tall buildings, lots of lights, lots of people everywhere, a very, very busy going city. And so when I read that, I imagined a very busy city. I also imagined a lot of construction and a lot of concrete, and canyons kind of go in and out, so I kind of imagined different levels and heights of buildings and just lots of busyness going on. And so that is where Georgia lived for a while, and by creating that mental image, I visualized where she would live for a while. So the wilderness and wonder of the world amazed Georgia. She wants to share this magic with others. Flowers delight her. She paints them as giants. People stop to stare. Georgia's flowers make them feel like tiny butterflies flirting through the universe of her garden. So as I read this page again, as I'm reading the part that said, flowers delight her, she paints them as giants, I immediately got a lot of mental images in my head when I read this. I also got a smell. I got the smell of flowers when I read this. And that can happen too, and we can use our thinking stem so I can smell flowers when I read our author when she writes. She paints them as giants. Flowers delight her. So I smell flowers. I also, when she says she paints them as giants, I get the mental image of giant flowers, like flowers taller than buildings, giant flowers. So I'm also picturing giant flowers when I read this. And these flowers that I'm picturing are all different colors, but they're just very, very big. So I think that's what she was painting, and that's what I see in my mind when I read that. Let's keep going. She moves to Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. Red hills, cliffs, silence, and the far away surround her. In the desert, she discovers extraordinary things. Skulls. The bones don't frighten Georgia. To her, they're alive and strong. Their beauty astounds her. Georgia expresses feelings in her own way. Words work, but for her, the color blue says it better. Or red, or a seashell, a pale bone, a sunset. The trees and hills whisper their secrets. They are friends always there for her. A canyon calls her. From the bottom at dusk, she sees a long line of cows above, black lace against a dusky sky. She hikes at dawn, and she climbs a ridge. The land enchants her. A range of hills is a mile of elephants with white sands at their feet. Sometimes her chow-chow tags along. He hops around rocks and chases antelope. They float ahead of her, yelping dog, and Georgia follows them. She breathes in the dawn. A sea of sage covers the plains before a mountain, and that like waves lapping against a shore. Sometimes she climbs a ladder to her roof. The moon rises above her. Beneath a giant canvas of inky night and silvery stars, Georgia dreams. So, immediately also when I'm reading these words, beneath a giant canvas of inky night and silvery stars, Georgia dreams. When I read those words, I'm visualizing a starry night, and I'm thinking back to the time where I sat outside and have looked at the stars at night. So in my mind, I'm creating a mental image of bright stars above me in a clear night. So I'm seeing bright stars and moon when I read those words. And that takes me back to a cool night. I can hear birds chirping, and I can smell the night in the air. So even now, Georgia can show you the world as she sees it. Open your eyes and walk along. See the colors? Hear the shapes singing? No need to hurry. Lean in, look closer. Still closer. There, the wideness and wonder of the world. So we're going to finish the story, and as we finish the story, I just want to take a look back at some of the things that I saw. And as I was reading, I saw a very busy city, and I saw the bright stars and the moon outside, and I could even smell flowers, and I pictured huge, giant flowers also. So in this visualizing strategy, we're creating mental images in our heads as we're reading. And this helps us make connections to the story. Like I thought about the time where I've sat outside, or the big cities that I've been to, and the flowers that I've smelled, and it helps me understand Georgia and her story and her life. So as we're reading on our own today and independently, we're going to be creating visual images in our heads. So I want you, as you're reading, to stop and take time to make those images in your head, and so that we can share them with a friend when we get back. And we can also use these thinking stems again. I can see, taste, hear, smell, and touch. So when I read, I imagine, and I'm picturing. And those thinking stems can help us while we're reading to create better images in our heads. So as we're reading, I want you to be visualizing and creating those mental images in your own heads, so that way you understand the story better, and then we can share them with others when you're